The twin suns rose slowly above the jagged cliffs of Velara, casting long golden shadows across the alien village. Life was already busy in the settlement. Tall warriors trained in the open courtyards, their polished armor glinting under the sunlight. Traders shouted at the market, selling food and strange tools. Children ran and laughed, their voices filling the air. But one figure walked alone. Her name was Lyra. She was unlike the others. While most of her people were tall and strong, built like proud guardians of their world, Lyra was small, much smaller than even the youngest of her kind. Where the others had broad shoulders and long limbs, her frame was fragile, and her steps were light. To outsiders, she looked like a child standing among giants, though she was the same age as the rest. For this, she was often mocked. "Look, the tiny one can barely carry a basket." The other girls laughed, watching her struggle with goods at the market. "She will never be chosen for the trials," the boys sneered. "Better for her to hide in the shadows." Lyra heard their words every day, and though she kept her head down, her heart ached. She had learned to walk quietly, to avoid attention, but the sting of being unwanted never left her. Even the elders, who were supposed to guide every child of the village, rarely looked at her. To them, she was a mistake, a burden, a reminder that not every life was born for greatness. Still, Lyra had one secret escape. Beyond the village walls stretched a forest unlike any other. Giant trees rose into the skies, their leaves shimmering, silver when the suns hit them. Beneath the roots, soft glowing stones rested like hidden jewels. Lyra loved the forest. There, no one mocked her. There, the trees whispered gently when the wind moved through their branches, as if they accepted her when her people did not. On this morning, after hearing too many cruel words at the market, she slipped away into the forest once more. Her bare feet touched the cool moss as she wandered deeper, humming softly to herself. She bent down to pick up one of the glowing stones, small enough to fit in her palm. Its warm light soothed her, as if reminding her that she was not completely invisible. In this vast universe, Lyra did not know that today would change her life forever. Far away, a ship descended through the skies. It was not like the tall silver vessels her people used. This one was smaller, rounder, built with human hands. The Earth explorers had arrived on Velara to study the alien society and learn about their culture. Among them was a young man named Daniel. Daniel was not the leader of his team, nor the strongest. He was simply curious, eager to meet new civilizations, and kind at heart. While the others busied themselves with research equipment, he asked for permission to explore the nearby forest. His teammates laughed at his excitement but allowed him to go, warning him not to wander too far. So it was that a human and an unwanted alien met among the trees. Lyra was kneeling by a stream, her reflection dancing on the water's surface. She dipped her fingers into the cool flow and let the stone's light shimmer beneath it. She did not hear the footsteps at first. Daniel stepped carefully, his boots crunching softly on the leaves, until he stopped only a few steps away. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Daniel saw a small alien girl, fragile but glowing in her own quiet way. She had pale skin that reflected the sunlight like pearl, and her large violet eyes were filled with a sadness that even a stranger could see. Her long silver hair spilled over her shoulders, almost hiding her delicate face. Lyra, meanwhile, saw a human unlike anything she had imagined. His build was strong but not towering like her people. His brown hair was short and messy, his eyes a calm blue. But what struck her most was his expression, not of mockery, not of judgment, but of gentle surprise, as if he had stumbled upon something precious. "Hello," Daniel said softly, raising a hand in greeting. Lyra froze. Her people rarely spoke kindly to her, and now this strange human addressed her with a voice that carried no laughter at her expense. She hesitated, clutching the stone in her hand. You are not from here," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "You're right, I'm from Earth. My team came to learn about your world. I didn't mean to frighten you." Lyra shook her head slowly. You did not frighten me. Only, no one usually talks to me like this. Her words caught Daniel's attention. He tilted, his head. What do you mean? Lyra lowered her gaze, shame flickering in her eyes. I am too small. My people think I am useless. They do not want me around. Daniel's heart ached at the honesty in her tone. He crouched down so his height would not tower over her. I don't think you're useless. Everyone has worth, no matter their size. Lyra blinked, confused. She had never heard such words spoken to her before. You really believe that? I do, Daniel said firmly. On my world, some of the smallest things can be the most powerful. Even the tiniest seed can grow into a great tree. For the first time in many years, Lyra smiled faintly. It was small and hesitant, but it was real. The warmth of his words lit something inside her, something she thought had long died. They sat together by the stream, speaking slowly, learning about each other. Daniel asked about the glowing stones, and Lyra explained how she collected them because they made her feel less alone. He listened with genuine interest, never once mocking her. Lyra asked about Earth, about its oceans and skies, and Daniel painted pictures with his words, making her imagine a world filled with colors and sounds she had never known. As the suns lowered toward the horizon, Lyra realized something strange. Time had passed, but she had not once felt the weight of loneliness. With Daniel near, her heart felt lighter. When they finally stood to leave, Daniel smiled at her again. I'd like to see you again, Lyra. Her heart skipped a beat at hearing her name spoken with kindness. She nodded quickly, though her cheeks warmed. Yes, I would like that too. And so, on that quiet evening beneath the silver leaves, a bond was formed, fragile yet glowing, like the stone Lyra carried in her hand. She did not yet know it, but this meeting would change her life forever. For the first time, she was not unwanted. The next morning in the village of Velara began as usual. Warriors trained with heavy weapons in the central grounds, their movements sharp and loud. Merchants opened their stalls, spreading out colorful fabrics and baskets of food. Elders gathered, near the great fire to speak of traditions. But among all this noise and order, Lyra felt her world was quietly different. She had met someone who looked at her not with scorn but with warmth. Someone who listened when she spoke. The thought of Daniel, the human explorer, replayed in her mind again and again like a song she did not want to end. Lyra sat outside her small home, holding one of her glowing stones, but this time the stone's light felt brighter. She whispered to herself, "He said I have worth." The words felt unreal, like a dream she feared might vanish if she blinked. Suddenly, a loud voice startled her. "Lyra, stop daydreaming and fetch water." It was Mira, one of the stronger girls from the village. She smirked as she passed by with her friends. Perhaps the little one is too weak to carry even a bucket. The laughter of the group echoed. As they walked away, Lyra lowered her gaze, hiding the hurt in her eyes. She wanted to speak back, but the words never came. Instead, she turned toward the forest, the place where her heart felt free. And so, she walked again into the silver-leaved woods, hoping she might see Daniel. Daniel was already there. He had told his team he wished to study the flora, but in truth his steps led him naturally to the same stream where he had first met Lyra. He was seated on a rock, sketching the trees in a small notebook. When he heard light footsteps, he looked up and smiled. "You came," he said warmly. Lyra's chest tightened at his smile. "Yes, I wanted to." She sat across from him, hugging her knees. For a while, silence stretched between them, but it was not uncomfortable. The sound of the stream and the gentle rustle of leaves filled the air. Daniel finally asked, "Why do they treat you so harshly?" Lyra hesitated. "Because I am not like them. My people believe size and strength are everything. To be small is to be weak, and to be weak is to be unwanted." Her voice cracked slightly. "Even the elders say I will never be chosen for trials or honored in the clan." Daniel frowned. "That's wrong. Strength is more than muscle. Courage, kindness, heart. These are strengths too, don't they see that? Lyra shook her head. No one ever says things like that. Until you. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his voice soft but firm. Then let me be the first to remind you as often as I can. You are not worthless, Lyra. You're unique, and that makes you important. Her violet eyes widened, filling with an emotion she could not explain. She wanted to believe him, but after years of rejection, hope was difficult. Yet when she looked at his face, she saw no lie, no mockery, only truth. "Why are you so kind to me?" she whispered. Daniel thought for a moment. "Because I know what it's like to be overlooked. Back on Earth, I was never the best soldier, never the strongest in training. People doubted me too. But I learned that being different doesn't mean being less." Lyra's lips parted slightly in surprise. This human from so far away had felt pain similar to hers. It made her feel less alone, as if their worlds were not so far apart after all. Days passed and their meetings became more frequent. Every afternoon, Lyra slipped away from her village, and Daniel left his team's camp. They met by the stream, talking about everything. Her world, his world, the stars above. Lyra showed him the glowing stones hidden beneath tree roots, explaining how she kept them close when she felt unwanted. Daniel, in return, told her about Earth's oceans, where waves crashed endlessly on golden shores. Sometimes he taught her small things: how to balance stones in a tower so they would not fall, how to weave simple patterns into grass, how to whistle through his fingers, making her laugh when the sound startled nearby birds. Other times, Lyra shared stories of her people, legends of great warriors, of battles fought under the twin suns. Yet she admitted, "None of those stories include someone like me." Daniel replied gently, "Then maybe it's time a new story was told. A story about someone small who changed everything." Her heart fluttered at his words, but not everyone approved. One evening, as Lyra returned from the forest, she found two elders waiting near her home. Their eyes were sharp. "You spend much time away, Lyra," one said sternly. "With the human," the other added, disapproving. "It is not proper." Lyra lowered her head. "He is kind. He does not mock me," the first elder scoffed. "Kindness will not help you survive the trials of life. The human fills your head with weakness. Stay away from him." Fear gripped her chest, but beneath the fear, a small fire burned. For the first time, Lyra wanted to speak back, yet she remained silent, not ready to fight them. The next day, she told Daniel what had happened. "They want me to stay away from you," she whispered, sitting on the moss near the stream. Daniel frowned. "Because they think I'm making you weak?" Lyra nodded. "But I don't feel weak with you, I feel stronger." Daniel smiled softly. "Then that's what matters. Sometimes the world fears what it doesn't understand. Don't let their voices silence yours." Lyra looked at him for a long time, her eyes shimmering. "You really believe I can be strong?" "I don't just believe it," Daniel said firmly. "I see it every time you walk into this forest, even though they mock you. Every time you choose to keep moving when they want you to hide. That's real strength, Lyra." Tears filled her eyes, but they were not tears of pain this time. They were tears of hope. She whispered, "Thank you." That evening, something strange happened. While Daniel and Lyra walked near the edge of the forest, they heard voices from the village. Warriors were speaking of a challenge, a test of courage against a rising threat from rival clans. They laughed, mentioning Lyra's name with scorn. "Maybe we should send the tiny one sneered. "Let her prove herself useful for once." Daniel's jaw tightened, but Lyra simply looked down, her shoulders trembling. "Don't listen to them," Daniel said quietly. "They don't know you like I do." Lyra nodded faintly, but the words of the warriors echoed painfully inside her mind. She wondered if she could ever change how her people saw her. Yet as she walked beside Daniel, Her steps felt steadier, because for the first time she was not walking alone, and deep inside, a bond stronger than either of them expected was beginning to grow, one that would soon be tested by trials neither of them could avoid. The news of the challenge spread quickly across the village of Velara. It was a time when the clans tested their courage against dangers that threatened their lands. This season, a rival clan had grown bold, sending their scouts too close to the borders. The elders announced that warriors would be chosen to defend the honor of their people. Everyone gathered in the wide courtyard, excitement buzzing like fire in the air. Tall figures stood proudly, their weapons gleaming. Families watched with pride, whispering which warriors might be chosen. And then a voice rang out, sharp with mockery. Why not send the tiny one? At least then she will be useful for once. Laughter erupted. Heads turned toward Lyra, who stood at the edge of the crowd trying to make herself small. Her cheeks burned, and she wanted to vanish. She had not asked to be part of the challenge, yet once again, her weakness became their entertainment. The elders, amused, whispered among themselves. One of them, stern and cold, declared, "Let her prove herself. If she fails, then all will see that she is unfit for even the smallest duty." A silence fell. Lyra's heart pounded. Fear clawed at her chest. She wanted to say no, to run back, into the forest, to hide. But before she could speak, another voice cut through the air. "I will go with her." Every head turned. Daniel stepped forward, his blue eyes steady, his voice calm but firm. He stood without armor, without the weapons the aliens carried, but there was no fear in him. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "The human?" Someone scoffed. "What use is he?" Another jeered. "He does not belong in our trials," an elder protested. But Daniel's gaze did not waver. "If you are testing courage, then let her face it with someone who believes in her. I will stand by her side." Lyra stared at him in shock. No one had ever defended her like this. No one had ever chosen to stand with her when the world mocked. For a moment she felt her legs might give out, not from weakness but from the weight of a hope so strong it frightened her. The elders debated, but in the end, they agreed. Perhaps it would amuse them to watch the human and the unwanted one struggle. Perhaps it would prove their beliefs correct. So it was decided. Lyra and Daniel would face the challenge together. The next morning, the two of them walked into the forest under the eyes of the village. Warriors followed at a distance to watch, ready to report their failure. The challenge was simple in words but deadly in truth. They had to recover a sacred banner hidden near the rival clan's border, guarded by traps and wild beasts. Lyra's hands trembled as she clutched the small knife they had given her. She had never used it in real battle. She glanced at Daniel, who walked calmly beside her. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. "I did," Daniel answered softly. "Because you don't deserve to face this alone." Her chest tightened at his words. She nodded, forcing her fear down. The forest grew thicker as they moved forward. Strange calls echoed in the distance and shadows shifted among the trees. When they reached a narrow passage blocked by sharp rocks, the warriors behind them murmured. This was the first trap, too small for most to squeeze through. But Lyra, with her slight frame, looked at it and realized she could fit. Daniel smiled, encouragingly. "You're perfect for this." Her heart raced, but she took a deep breath and crawled through. The stones scraped her arms, but she pushed on until she reached the other side. She turned and called back. "There's a lever here. It opens the path." With trembling hands, she pulled it. The rocks shifted, opening a wider gap for Daniel to follow. The warriors, watching from afar, fell silent. Already the tiny one had succeeded where larger warriors could not. The deeper they went, the harder the test became. At one point, a wild beast, a creature with sharp tusks and glowing eyes, charged from the shadows. Lyra froze in terror, her knife shaking in her hand. But Daniel stepped in front of her, holding only a broken branch he had grabbed from the ground. With quick movements, he shouted and waved, distracting the beast. When it lunged, he dodged to the side, striking its sensitive nose. The creature roared and stumbled back before vanishing into the woods. Lyra rushed to him, her eyes wide with fear and admiration. "You could have been hurt," Daniel smiled, breathing heavily. "Better me than you, but you see, together we can do this." Her heart thudded. She had never been protected, never been valued, and now this human risked himself without hesitation. Hours passed. Finally, they reached a cliff where the sacred banner was tied to a stone pillar. But the path was narrow, and one wrong step meant falling into the deep gorge below. The warriors who followed had expected them to fail here. Lyra's legs shook, but Daniel placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone. We'll go one step at a time." Hand in hand, they crossed the narrow path. Lyra's small feet found places to step where larger warriors might have slipped. Daniel guided her, keeping her steady. Together, they reached the pillar. Lyra untied the banner, her hands trembling, and held it high. From the cliff behind them, the warriors gasped. Against all odds, the tiny alien and the human had done what no one expected. When they returned to the village, the crowd was waiting. Lyra carried the banner, her head held higher than ever before. Daniel walked beside her, proud and calm. For the first time in her life, silence greeted Lyra. Not laughter, not mockery. The villagers stared at her with wide eyes, as if seeing her for the first time. An elder finally spoke. "The tiny one succeeded?" Another answered slowly. "She did." And the human stood with her. Lyra's heart raced. She wanted to hide, but Daniel gently squeezed her hand, grounding her. She took a deep breath and stood tall. For once, she did not feel small. That night, as the fires burned low, Lyra and Daniel sat at the edge of the village. The banner lay beside them, glowing faintly in the firelight. "You were amazing," Daniel said softly. "Do you see now? You are not weak." Lyra turned to him, her violet eyes shining. "I could not have done it without you." Daniel shook his head. "No, I only stood with you. The strength was always yours." She looked down, clutching the glowing stone in her hand. For years she had believed she was unwanted. But now, after this day, something inside her shifted. Maybe she was not worthless. Maybe she could be more. And as Daniel's steady gaze met hers, her heart whispered that perhaps she was already becoming something she had never thought possible, someone who mattered. The night after the challenge was unlike any other Lyra had ever known. For the first time, she walked through the village and no one laughed. No one mocked. Eyes followed her, but they were not filled with scorn. Some were wide with surprise. Others held the faint glimmer of respect. It was a silence that felt heavier than words. Lyra tried not to meet their gazes, though her heart beat faster than ever. She had carried the sacred banner back, and that image lingered in everyone's mind. Still, she could not believe it herself. She, once the unwanted one, had succeeded. Daniel walked beside her, his presence steady and warm. She had thought he might leave after the trial, returning to his human team, but he stayed close. His quiet confidence gave her courage when her legs felt weak under the weight of so many eyes. When they reached the edge of the village, away from the crowd, Lyra finally exhaled. She sat on a stone, hugging her knees while Daniel lowered himself onto the grass. "You did well," he said softly. Lyra shook her head. "I was afraid the whole time. If you had not been there, you were afraid." Daniel interrupted, gently, "But you still moved forward. That is courage. And you used your own gifts, your size, your careful steps. Without you, I could not have crossed that cliff. We both know it." Her violet eyes shimmered as she turned toward him. "No one has ever spoken to me like this. Not once." Daniel's smile was calm, yet there was something deeper in his gaze, something that warmed Lyra's chest and made her look away quickly. The days that followed brought change. Children who once laughed at her now whispered about her bravery. Some of the young warriors, though still proud, looked at her with a new caution. as if unsure whether mocking her was safe anymore. Even the elders, though reluctant, could not deny what had happened. Yet respect did not erase envy. Mira, the tall girl who had often mocked Lyra, scowled whenever she passed. It was luck, she told others. Without the human, she would have failed. Her bitterness spread among those who could not accept the idea that someone small could achieve what they could not. Lyra heard these words, and though they stung, she found they did not crush her the way mockery once had. Daniel's voice, always steady in her memory, reminded her that worth was not given by others but discovered within. Still, doubts lingered. At night, alone in her small home, Lyra whispered, "Am I truly strong? Or do they only see Daniel's strength?" The thought troubled her, but every time she met Daniel's eyes, the worry softened. One evening, Daniel invited her to walk beyond the village. The forest was calm, lit by the silver glow of the twin moons. They sat by the stream where they had first met, the water reflecting stars above. For a long time they were quiet, listening to the gentle sound of flowing water. Then Daniel spoke. "You've changed," he said. "When I first saw you, you carried sadness like a heavy cloak. Now I see something brighter." Lyra looked down at her hands. "It is because of you. You made me believe that I might be more than what they call me." Daniel shook his head softly. "No, Lyra. The strength was always there. I only reminded you to look at it." Her heart pounded. She wanted to believe his words, but she also feared them. The warmth in his voice carried something she did not fully understand, something that scared her and comforted her at once. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why do you care so much for me? You are not of my people. You could have ignored me as they did." Daniel hesitated, his eyes lowered to the stream, where moonlight danced. On the surface. "Because I see you, not what others call you, not what they think. I see you. And I care for what I see." Lyra froze, her breath caught in her chest. No one had ever said such words to her. The sincerity in his tone reached into her heart, touching wounds she had hidden for years. She whispered, almost afraid, "Care for me. How?" Daniel looked at her then, his gaze steady and unshaken. "I love you, Lyra." The world seemed to stop. The rustle of leaves, the sound of the stream, even the beating of her heart, all felt distant. She stared at him, unable to speak. Love. The word had never been meant for her. She had been the unwanted one, the burden, the mistake. Yet here was a human from another world speaking it without hesitation. Her throat tightened and tears filled her eyes. "You love me?" Daniel nodded. "Yes. Not for your size or your strength, but for your heart, for your courage, for the way you shine even when the world tries to dim you." The tears slipped down her cheeks, but they were not born of sadness. They were born of disbelief, of joy so sharp it hurt. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Daniel replied gently. "Just know it is true." But the moment was not safe from the eyes of others. Unseen, Mira had followed them, her jealousy burning. She listened, her hands clenched. The idea that the human, who had brought respect to Lyra, now spoke of love, was too much to bear. The next morning, whispers spread across the village like fire in dry grass. "The human loves her," voices said. "He chooses the tiny one." Some were shocked, others laughed in disbelief. A few frowned in anger, declaring it dangerous. The elders summoned Daniel before them. Their expressions were stern, their voices heavy. "You grow too close to the unwanted one," one said. "Your words fill her head with false pride." Another added, "This bond cannot be allowed. You are not one of us." Daniel stood tall, unshaken by their glares. "I will not deny what I feel. I am not ashamed of her. She is stronger than you allow yourselves to see." The courtyard fell into Silence. Never before had someone spoken so openly against the elder's judgment. Lyra stood at the edge of the crowd, her body trembling. She feared they would punish him, cast him out, or worse. But Daniel's voice carried no fear. He spoke as if nothing could break his truth. For Lyra, it was both terrifying and beautiful. That night she found him again by the stream. Her eyes were wet with tears. You should not have spoken against them. They will never forgive you. Daniel looked at her with a calm smile. It doesn't matter. What matters is you. I will not hide how I feel. Lyra's heart broke open. For years she had begged for even a scrap of kindness, and now she had found more than kindness. She had found love. She reached out, her hand trembling, and placed it over his. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. No one has ever loved me before. I don't know if I even understand how, but I feel something when I'm with you. Something I never want to lose. Daniel's fingers closed gently over hers. Then, hold on to it, because I will never let go. The silver moons shone above, reflecting in the stream as two hands clasped together. And in that quiet moment, Lyra realized her heart was no longer just her own. It belonged to the human who had seen her when no one else would. The morning sun cast golden streaks across the village, yet the air felt different. Excitement and tension mingled together as Lyra and Daniel walked toward the central square. Today, the elders had summoned all the villagers for a council, a meeting that would decide the future of Lyra, and perhaps the human who had dared to love her. Lyra felt her hands tremble as she walked beside Daniel. She had grown stronger, braver, and yet the presence of the elders still weighed heavily on her. Whispers followed them, some filled with curiosity, others with doubt. Daniel noticed her unease and gently squeezed her hand. Whatever happens, he said softly, we face it together. Lyra nodded, finding courage in his gaze. His calm certainty had become her anchor, and with him she felt ready to face anything. The council hall was filled with figures who had once dismissed her, laughed at her, and even ignored her presence. Now, they looked at her differently. Some stared, with awe, others with unease, but all eyes were on her. The head elder, a tall and imposing figure, spoke first. Lyra, you have returned victorious from the trial. Many are surprised, some even doubt how this was achieved. Lyra lifted her chin, her violet eyes shining. I did what I could, she said. But I was not alone. Daniel helped me. He believed in me when no one else did. A murmur ran through the crowd. The villagers had expected humility, perhaps even apology for daring to succeed. But Lyra spoke with quiet strength. Daniel stepped forward. Lyra is capable of far more than anyone imagined, and beyond that, she has shown courage, heart, and intelligence that surpasses many in this village. I stand by her, not as a savior, but as someone who sees her true worth. Some elders shifted uneasily. This human, who had walked among them only days before, now spoke with authority and respect for one of their own. Authority? One elder scoffed. You speak as if you know our ways. You are not one of us. How dare you challenge the council? Daniel did not flinch. I challenge only the injustice of dismissing someone because of size or difference or fear. I challenge the idea that worth is measured by tradition alone. Lyra has proven that courage and heart are the true measures of a person. A silence fell. Even those who had mocked Lyra could not ignore the truth in his words. Lyra's heart raced, but she felt no fear. She realized that her journey was no longer just about survival or proving herself. It was about showing everyone that being different did not mean being less. The council deliberated, long and tense. Villagers whispered among themselves, some supporting Lyra, others questioning. But slowly the tide began to turn. The elders who had doubted her strength found themselves challenged by the undeniable truth. Lyra had faced the impossible and succeeded. Finally, the head elder spoke. Lyra, you have shown us courage and skill beyond your years. You have earned respect, not by following the path we expected, but by creating your own. And Daniel, your support and faith in her is clear. You honor her and our village in a way we cannot ignore. The words felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The villagers murmured their agreement, and one by one, nods spread throughout the hall. Lyra felt tears prick at her eyes. After a lifetime of rejection, she had found acceptance, and not just for her deeds, but for who she was. After the council, Daniel and Lyra walked through the village. Children ran to them, asking questions and laughing. Young warriors, once skeptical, approached with curiosity instead of scorn. Even Mira, who had once mocked Lyra, lowered her gaze and muttered a quiet, "I didn't expect that." Lyra looked at her, offering a small smile. "It is never too late to change," she said softly. Mira looked away, her expression unreadable, but something in her posture had softened. The village no longer saw Lyra as tiny, unwanted, or weak. They saw her as someone remarkable, someone who had changed the way they viewed courage, strength, and even love. Days passed, and Lyra and Daniel spent their time exploring the forests, learning about each other's worlds, and sharing stories. Lyra had learned about Daniel's human home, his adventures among the stars, and his hope for a better universe. Daniel had learned about Lyra's life, the traditions of her people, and the hardships she had endured. Every story brought them closer. Every shared moment strengthened the bond that had begun in fear and grew into trust, admiration, and love. One evening, as the twin moons rose again, Lyra and Daniel sat on the hill overlooking the village. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of blossoms. Daniel turned to her, his expression gentle but serious. "Lyra, you have changed this village. You have changed me. You have shown that love does not see size or race or origin. It sees heart. It sees courage. It sees truth." Lyra smiled, her heart full. "And you saw me when no one else did. You believed in me. You gave me something I never thought I could have. Someone who loves me." Daniel reached for her hands. "I do, and I will. For as long as I can." Lyra's chest swelled with emotion. She leaned against him, feeling warmth and safety she had never known. For the first time she felt complete, not because of what she had achieved, but because of the love they shared. News of their bond spread across the neighboring settlements. Some were shocked that a human and a tiny alien could form such a strong connection. Others were inspired, seeing a possibility of harmony, understanding, and acceptance beyond their own worlds. Lyra and Daniel became symbols of courage and love. They did not seek recognition, but their story could not be hidden. Villagers and travelers alike spoke of the human who saw what others ignored, and the tiny alien who proved that heart mattered more than size. Even Mira eventually approached Lyra one morning. I wanted to say congratulations," she said, her voice uncertain. "You changed everything here." Lyra nodded, her violet eyes gentle. "Thank you. And you can change too. It is never too late to see the truth." Mira left, her steps lighter than before. And Lyra realized that her journey had not only changed her life, but it had begun to change the hearts of others. In the quiet moments, Daniel and Lyra shared their dreams. They talked about exploring distant planets, learning from new civilizations, and perhaps even building a life together among the stars. The universe was vast, full of challenges and wonders. But together, they felt ready for anything. Lyra, once tiny and unwanted, had found a home in Daniel's heart. Daniel, a human far from his world, had found a companion who inspired him in ways he could never have imagined. The bond they shared was not defined by size, origin, or expectation. It was defined by courage, respect, and the purest form of love, AID, love that could not be ignored, denied, or broken. One morning, as the village woke to the golden light of dawn, Lyra and Daniel stood at the edge of the cliff, where they had once faced the impossible together. The wind swept past them, carrying the promise of new adventures. Lyra looked at Daniel, her heart full. We made it through everything, she said softly. And yet, I feel like this is only the beginning. Daniel smiled, brushing a stray strand of violet hair from her face. It is only the beginning. Together we can face anything, no matter how big, no matter how small, no matter where the stars take us. Lyra laughed, a sound full of joy and freedom. I never imagined love could feel like this. Daniel held her close, his eyes shining. And I never imagined I could love someone so completely. But here we are, proof that the heart sees what the eyes cannot. The twin moons rose behind them, casting silver light across the land. And for the first time, Lyra felt that she belonged, not just in the village, not just with Daniel, but in the universe itself. No alien had wanted her before, but now, one human loved her. And that love had changed everything. Lyra's heart was no longer small, no longer hidden. It was full, open, and alive with courage, hope, and a love that could touch even the farthest stars. And as Daniel held her hand, she knew one truth above all. Sometimes being wanted is not about being chosen by many. It is about being seen and loved by the one who truly matters.